All right. Pretty sure we are on. We've got 7 people already jumped in. Chris is in. Yes, Chris. Just wait for a few more to jump on. We've got a big show tonight. We're going to preview the game against North. Boz is on. Mellow, usual suspects. Here we go. Everyone's in. It's fantastic. I'll give it another 30 seconds. Hope everyone's had a fantastic week thus far. A few days. Had a good weekend. 10 people in. Here we go. Let's go. Stuart's in. The gang's back. It's a Tuesday night. You know what that means. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Fan Forum on the Black and White United YouTube channel. I'm your host, Andreas. Thank you so much for joining in today's video, today's live. It's going to be a good one. I've got a special guest coming on too. We're going to be chatting with a good friend of mine, Elie, who is a massive North Melbourne supporter. He's going to jump on also. And then we're going to preview, obviously, the Collingwood and North Melbourne game. So I'll get Elie on for a good 15 to 20 minutes so we can have a chat about all things Collingwood and North Melbourne. And then obviously the link's up there. So after I chat with him, anybody wants to jump on and have a quick chat, that's fine. It's going to be a solid hour tonight. I'm really looking forward to it. So pump your questions in and stuff like that, and I'll get to it as quick as possible. But yeah, we'll pretty much start straight away. So just confirming that we do have a couple of outs that have already been confirmed, with Steele Sidebottom being managed this week. So obviously they said that he played all the games leading up to now, and he got subbed out against Fremantle, which I think was a pretty good move considering. And then we're able to obviously manage him through that process, but we give him the rest this week, obviously leading into another shorter turnaround against Hawthorn, which really, could be a free hit depending on this game against North Melbourne, and I'll touch on that a bit later. Also, Lockie Schultz is under the concussion protocol still. That's a bit of a shame considering that I was really hoping that he'd come back for this game against North Melbourne, because I think he would have torn it up something vicious, especially on the marble ground, a bit of a smaller ground and some decent pressure as well. But nevertheless, as long as he's okay, Houston and Darcy Moore are both on the watch list. They have to get through the main training session on Thursday, which is going to be interesting. So we'll see how we go with that there. But without further ado, I'm going to add Elie straight into the chat now so we can get the ball rolling for this Collingwood North Melbourne preview. I'll say, Elie, can you hear me, mate? All good?
Hey, mate. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, definitely can hear you, mate. Thank you for having me on.
No, thank you for jumping on tonight. I really appreciate it. Now, I'm just going to cut straight to the chase. We've got a few people already in, so I'm sure the questions are going to come firing through pretty quickly. But tell us, you were there last season, but I've got to talk about last season's game between Collingwood and North Melbourne off the bat. What was it? 45 points up, I think it was.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was around 45. Yeah, around halftime. I was there. In GA at the moment, at where I was. Basically, yeah, it was. I was as a neutral. As a supporter there, it was a exhilarating game. Even though we've lost, I'm still feeling it now. Like how close we were getting over a line, getting an upset, especially a big team. Even though it was Collingwood had a bit of a hangover season, but it would have been such a snag to get a win. But last, obviously, it wasn't meant to be. But yeah, it was if you were neutral, definitely would have been a fantastic game to see, but we felt we should have won it. It was just one of those games where we should have done what we had to do and just grind it down, but it wasn't meant to be. So
was there a point in the game though last year where like you started thinking, oh God, they're coming back now, like we're in a little bit of trouble?
Probably the biggest one would be Hill's mark, obviously, and him leading his team just to make sure to get themselves over the line. I personally felt within a goal. Obviously, us winning by a goal at the time. I had a sneaking suspicion we probably wouldn't have held on, but on the other hand, I was hoping for better, but unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be for the day. But it was a good game for what it was. But yeah, Collingwood were just too good in the end to get that win. So it was quite a fun game, but it wasn't meant to be for us in regards to how we were meant to be going.
You think, like, as a Collingwood supporter, like, we went through all of 22 and most of 23 winning like that, and you'd think that we would have been used to it by then at that stage last season. Like, I still felt as if there were points in the game. Yes, Hill's mark and probably some other little times when we were transitioning the ball from the back line going forward. I did think that we were like, oh, hang on a second, if we don't let them get too far ahead, we can actually still come back and win this. It was actually 54 points, not 45 points that you guys were up by. And I didn't think that, we could probably do it from that margin, like that far out. But then, I don't know, everything just sort of went our way. There were decisions there that probably should have been paid. I mean, that's just the luck of the game, I suppose. But nevertheless, that's last season. We won't worry about that now. This season is going to be. This season's a completely different kettle of fish. Just a few comments that have come up already. So James has said, "No way will they get a jump on us like they did last year." So I hope not. I mean, you guys, you are playing good though, which we'll talk about in a second. Tees said that North always play their grand final against us, and I'm telling you, and I know you're a North fan, so you may agree with this, but every team every week plays their grand final against Collingwood, and it's something that we're just used to now. So it's like we're always up for a big game every single week. Peter says Larky always tears us a new one. I've actually got a note here about Larky for later on in this conversation to make a point about him. And also the same here with LDU. Peter G, thanks for contributing yet again. And he goes, and LDU always plays his best game of the season against us. He's actually played quite a few games this season. So quite a few good games this season at LDU, which I will talk about him in a minute. But just some North Melbourne players I want to touch on, Elie, so we can get straight into it. Last week, so the last couple of weeks, you guys have played really well. You obviously drew against Brisbane, which I was kind of hoping that you guys would have won that game because it would have put us on top of the ladder at the end of that round. That game against Brisbane, did you go in there with a bit of confidence, or did you think, with just as long as we're competitive sort of thing, or did you think that you guys would get pretty close to that one?
Yeah, we were coming off of agonizing close game against Essendon the previous week before. I was actually there with Corey, who was obviously on your channel weeks back. But we were going off thinking our wheels we can see what Clarkson is trying to pull with his team, and we obviously his jigsaw puzzles need to be rectified. Our team needs to be a bit more polished, but we were going to the Brisbane game thinking, yes, they're reigning premiers, but there was our second halves are always better than our first half because we always start slow and then we try to finish a bit stronger. That's how our season's been going so far. But we felt as if we should have probably had it in the bag. But yeah, it was good. It was fantastic for what it was. It's just we felt, we should have got over the line with Brisbane. It was there for the taking.
And then obviously last week, which I'll talk about now, the game against Richmond, I feel as if you had played against any other side, and this is no disrespect, I felt like if you had played that game against any other side that day, you probably would have got beaten. But you came up against Richmond and they gave it a fair crack, and you ended up only winning by 4 points or something like that. But just a couple of players that I wanted to touch on. Sherry, 19 disposals last week. I thought he was fantastic out of the ruck. And I think that Sherry and Cameron duel is going to be probably the best ruck battle of the year to date next week, especially at a smaller ground like Marvel. McKercher had 22 disposals and a goal. That I thought he was really good too. Sheasel again just did his thing. He only got 20 disposals, but I thought he's like how effective he was and stuff like that, especially pushing out from the back line was fantastic. But the one I want to talk about is LDU. I mean, he signs a deal and a 7-year deal, and his last few games have been out of this world. 27 disposals. I mean, you'd be pretty rapt as a North Melbourne supporter that he re-signed for you.
Yeah, of course. He's one of our talismen for the last couple of years. Obviously, our squad hasn't been great, but obviously LDU's been practically one of our shining stars. But obviously, the first couple of games, yeah, he's started slow this year, trying to pick up his rhythm again. Yes, there've been times where I feel he should be picking. He's got levels in him that he should be possibly attaining to, but the last couple of weeks, especially against Richmond, him having 27 disposals and in that midfield battle, especially with the young guys at Richmond, yeah, it's one of his better games this season so far, and I'm actually quite proud of it. Yeah, it was quite phenomenal for what he did for his role, and he's giving what he needs to do.
What do you think about the Sherry Cameron battle that's going to happen this week? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I personally, as I said before, I think that Sherry and Cameron, and obviously from a Collingwood point of view, like I speak about Darcy Cameron every single week. And my biggest thing is obviously with Mason Cox playing in our side, regardless if he gets subbed here and there or whatever, it's the role that he plays which allows Cameron to have, time in the ruck, but then obviously get a rest up forward, and we're not taking him off the ground so much. I think Mason Cox is so important to the structure of the side, regardless. But this battle, I think that Sherry and Cameron have gone past Max Gawn for Melbourne. I think they are both way past him now. And I think that, look, my personal opinion is that these two players are worth more than what St Kilda's offering TDK. And Carlton supporters will laugh at that off. St Kilda supporters might laugh that off, whatever. But the influence that these two are having at both their clubs right now is they're probably the most important players structurally in their side. What are your thoughts on this battle coming up?
Yeah, I totally wholeheartedly agree with you with what you're saying. It's going to be one of the big features of this game. Literally, Sheasel, Cameron, both best ruckmen of the competition. I personally feel
Sherry.
Sorry, apologies. Got Sheasel on my mind, but Sherry and obviously Cameron. Yep, definitely best ruckman of the competition. Both of them going at it. Both quite plenty of years ahead to give, obviously, towards their respective clubs. Obviously, Sherry a couple years younger than Cameron, but yeah, it's going to be a sight to see, especially with those two going at it. I personally feel that Sherry hasn't met his match just yet in his season. I've always felt he's always had a better of his opposition ruckman in his, especially whether he plays up against. But this is probably his big test, because obviously we played Melbourne previously in our first few rounds. Obviously, Bourne had his off day, but yeah, Sherry is quite. Yeah, he's up there, and he's our talisman. He's literally been fantastic for us so far this season, and honestly, obviously, AFL coaches have literally put him basically into as the number one person at the moment for their ranking in terms in our competition, considering how good Sherry's been in this season so far.
And does Sherry tend to see with Cameron and the Cameron Cox combination, and even when Cox wasn't in the side and we had someone like Dan McStay doing the pinch hitting before he got injured, does Sherry go back forward? Because honestly, I haven't watched a lot of North games. I've probably watched the last 2 to 3 weeks more. But does Sherry tend to go up forward and rest, and then someone like a Larky takes the ruck, or is it pretty much 100% of the time Sherry's in the ruck?
Most of the time, Sherry would be around the midfield area doing the grinding. He'll be helping out with clearances through the midfield to try to push the ball forward. Yes, he can. He does push up forward just a little bit if need be as a as an extra option, especially in the last game where, he did push up a fair bit, but most of the time he would spend the midfield just to try to stabilize the area that he's in and making sure he does what he's primary meant to be doing as his main role, which is being
Yeah.
a contentious ruckman there for our
Oh,
squad.
yeah, cool. The other one too that I want to mention, and Peter G's obviously put this in the chat here, which is a really good point, which actually leads me to the next part of the conversation, was Wardlaw against Long would be a great battle, two hard nuts against each other. Now, I spoke to you about this the other day. I think that George Wardlaw is going to be an absolute freak, and he already is. I think in the next couple of years, he's going to out and out be one of the best inside midfielders in the competition. The way that he moves the ball and the way that, I know it was against Richmond, so obviously less opposition compared to other clubs, but the way that he was moving it around with the ball and what he does when he hasn't got the ball, I think is like so important to North Melbourne in particular. And, you know, I would love him if he was obviously at Collingwood. I don't think that we need him at the moment if he was ever to leave or anything like that. But the way he plays for North Melbourne is just fantastic. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that battle, because Ned Long's obviously come out of nowhere for us. Obviously struggling to make the team and stuff, but then he gets in and he has an immediate impact that potentially could leave someone like a Tom Mitchell out of the side in the long run. I do think Tom Mitchell comes back in with us moving the magnets around and stuff. He'll find his place there, but it's going to be a pretty big battle, that those two there in the midfield. Is there any particular Collingwood players, and I'll give you my North Melbourne players, but is there any particular like two Collingwood players that you think that are going to be extremely damaging for North Melbourne? And don't give me the whole Nick Dacos. I mean, we all know that, but is there any other player, any other two players that you're really worried about from a North Melbourne point of view?
Obviously this could be a good game for obviously Hill and obviously Membry. Considering Membry, I feel he's still got levels to step up. He's still got plenty of development in him, a bit more. So Hill and Membry, our biggest weaknesses for us has been our defense, and those two can easily tear up our defense. Even though the last couple of weeks it's been quite good in regard for what it is, considering our selections and our defense. So those two I'm looking at particularly, especially with Hill. I can easily see him getting 3-4 goals against us, maybe even the difference between winning and losing a game, obviously between our respective clubs. And then Membry, I see him as a guy potentially stepping up if he pulls through, obviously from what you said on Thursday, like obviously with his training and whatnot. But and Houston as well. But obviously as a third player. But Hill and Membry for me in terms of that.
Yeah, nice. Look, my two players for North, and I know that you want to obviously have it. You did say that before we jumped on that you wanted to mention him as well. But my two players for North Melbourne obviously are, I've already spoken about Wardlaw, so I won't mention him again. But Larky always has a good game against us. We struggle to shut him down. He has the potential to kick, 3 or 4 goals against us, and particularly like at the start of the game, if North get a good jump straight away, especially if they get those clearances at the midfield and the delivery is good to him. The other one that I think is going to be a bit of a danger is Paul Curtis comes back this week, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, our forgotten man. He was literally one of the leading goal scorers before his suspension, unfortunately. He's definitely coming back. Apparently, he pulled his squad last week, but he's so far from, according to rumours I've been seeing on social media, he's being pulled out fine, and injury list he's not there, so he's definitely in unless something majorly happens in the next couple of days.
Yeah, nice. All right, well then that's pretty good. I want you to give me, before I do, I'll do my big call for this game after we give our tips and stuff like that in particular. But what are your tips for this game, and who do you think is the margin, the winner of the game, the margin, and obviously best on ground? Go.
I'll do best on ground first. For us, I'd probably gonna say I reckon it's going to be Larky's game. Larky has had a couple quieter weeks on him, and I reckon it's going to be his. Yes, he's a guy who always comes up for Collingwood, but this year he's been a bit quieter than usual. But so I expect him to be the one for best on ground. Tips wise, in terms of who's going to win, I'm going to say North by 5. That's why I put it in my head since this. That's why I feel it's going to happen. The only reason why is I feel this is the game where Collingwood would not turn up. I know you've been expecting maybe next week against Hawthorn, but I reckon this is the game that where we might be taken lightly, and I think we can pounce on it and grind you down to get a win. That's my personal opinion on it.
Look from a neutral point of view, I think every supporter wants to see a close game. I think a little bit different. I actually think this game we're going to turn up quite well, and I think because North have had a few good games in a row, this is probably the game where they tend to drop off a little bit, very similar to how you guys were against Sydney after you had that really good win against Melbourne. I'm tipping the Pies by 26 points. I think that I don't think it's going to be an overly massive margin, but I think 26 points is probably where it's going to be. I do think that North are going to match up with us very well at parts of the ground. So I think their forward line to our back line is going to be a really good battle. The Checkers Common battle is going to be fantastic. And then, or you look at our forward line, I think someone like a Bobby Hill is going to have a really good day. So I'm tipping the Pies by 26, and the best on ground is going to back it up 2 weeks in a row. I'm tipping Josh Dacos to have a field day against you guys off the half-back line. My big call for the week brought to you by Hopper Bros Barbecue, and I just want to thank all our sponsors, obviously, for this video. So New Homes Victoria, your local builder. But the big call sponsored by Hopper Bros Barbecue, I'm tipping Bobby Hill to kick 5 goals this week against North Melbourne. So that's my big call for the week. I just want to quickly touch on a couple of the comments quickly before we let you go. So Peter G here said that Cameron and Cox will need to restrict Sherry's influence. I think Sherry's a fantastic ruckman. I absolutely love the way that he plays. I think that's going to be an awesome battle. And then we've also got here, this is a good one here too. T said Jack Darling is also their second ruck, so we could probably get away with Long or Membry as our second ruck and play Charlie West for Cox. Possibility, but it's also going to be good conditions. It's not going to be wet because the roof's going to be closed. So this game, I think if Cox does play, I think he can have a good influence in the game. James got a good point here and says Nick hasn't looked good for the past 3 weeks. They should rest him this week, in my opinion. It's going to be very interesting to obviously see if he gets a tag. That's going to be interesting. And I don't know who will tag him. So that's probably something to have a think about. What about Checkers and Combin? I said that before. That's going to be an awesome battle thing as well. And then this one here. We are too experienced to take them lightly. I don't think that we're going to take you guys lightly, simply because if you look at the way that you guys played against us last year, I think that's going to be in our minds too, that you can get a serious jump against us. So it's going to be a fascinating battle. Obviously, if the Pies win, we do lock ourselves obviously in the top 4 even more. But on the flip side too, if North Melbourne were to actually get the win this week here, it puts you guys in a very interesting position. It puts you guys back in the mix with like your Melbournes, your St Kildas, even your Port Adelaides, and and even Carlton too. So you're going to be in that mix there. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. Before I let you go, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess it's going to be a good game, I guess. Yeah, it's back obviously at Marvel. Obviously, I think it's your first game at Marvel all season from memory. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. Obviously, you guys are used to playing at MCG, bigger, wider ground. But, yeah, it's going to be an interesting battle. Like, obviously, midfield or forwards, obviously exclusions between both sides and whatnot. Yeah, it's going to be a good game, and I expect, for anyone watching as a neutral should be entertained. I reckon it's going to be a game of a round. That's my personal call. I think it's going to be a game of a round. So
I hope so, because I reckon the Doggies and the Cats on Thursday night's going to be pretty good too. So if this one becomes a game of the round, then obviously something interesting is going to happen, which would be good. Elie, thank you so much for jumping on. I really appreciate it, and I will talk to you soon. But thanks for tonight, mate. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you very much, mate. Appreciate it. Enjoy your evening. Thanks, mate.
All right, there we go. So that was Elie from the North Melbourne Footy Club, loyal supporter there. So yeah, that's a thoughts from a dedicated North Melbourne supporter. I'm gonna making some comments, Daniel. I'm not gonna post it there. Shut up, bro. All right, so I'm gonna get David Hatley on, who's been waiting patiently. This is something that I love having him on. Here we go. Hatters, can you hear me, mate?
Are you there, Robbo?
Are you there, Robbo?
Yeah.
How
are you, buddy?
Good, mate. How are you?
Oh, yeah. Just enjoying the view from on top of the ladder at the moment.
Yeah, I've actually got a case of vertigo. I'm on tablets and stuff for him. So being so high up, it's not helping everything when I'm looking down. But what are your thoughts quickly on the weekend? What do you reckon?
Oh, I reckon that was a very good performance. I highly rate the Crows. Yeah, pretty happy. They challenged us a couple of times. They missed some, easy shots. We missed some shots. The umpiring was doubtful, a couple of times with both teams. There's a couple of dodgy 50-metre penalties either way. But, we got away with almost a 2-goal win against a pretty good side.
Yeah, obviously with the conditions as well. I mean, if it was dry, I don't know. Like you look back at the Essendon game, for example, and you think like if it was a dry game on Anzac Day, I think we would have been 10 goals up at quarter time against it. But this game, obviously similar weather conditions and stuff. I think even if it was a dry game, it still would have been a pretty tight contest regardless. And I actually thought at the start that Adelaide were using the width of the ground quite well, and they were getting it into their forward line really well. But then at the same time, we just had that little bit more of experience, and we just had there wasn't a time during the game where I was like, oh no, like it's not happening today. I still felt like we had control for most of the part. Did you feel that as well?
Yeah, well, I'm feeling more comfortable with this team now, as opposed to say even 2023. That if we're not playing at our best within a game, that McRae and the assistant coaches are able to tweak some things, like within games or at half time, to put things back in our way. So, even when they sort of had their sort of like real attack at us in that third quarter, we adjusted well. Now that's obviously to do with the experience we've got in the team, but I think they've done a lot of tactical planning over the last 12 months to make those changes within games.
They've done that though quite a bit. Like I felt like obviously the game against Carlton, it was like that heavily contested, labour-intensive, like just scrappy sort of game. And then that started that third quarter, we got the game on our terms and we completely flipped the narrative and we played our style even in wet conditions. And we used the width, we drilled it into the forward line better. And it only took 10 minutes to pretty much blow them out the water. And then we sort of just went into that reserve mode thing. But I also felt that probably the game of the year so far where we've adapted to challenges was Gather Round against Sydney. Like every time we got 2 or 3 goals up, they would then come back. And then it was sort of like, it was goal for goal, but it was like 3 goals to 1 goal, then 3 goals to 2 goals or whatever it was. And we just kept on responding every single time, like even to the start of the last quarter, when they came out quite strong and we were just able to hold them off. I thought that was great. I think, and I've said it before, we've just been able to adjust to every challenge so far that a team's given us and hold on. I think the game that we probably held on for dear life was probably the Western Bulldogs game, but that was no fault of our own for not, taking those chances in front of goal towards the end there. But at the end of the day, I mean, you can only beat who's in front of you, and I think we've done pretty well so far. I want to get your thoughts on, obviously, Braden Maynard. Being made captain, do you think you'll stay after being made captain against Adelaide?
Oh, it's hard to know. I mean, obviously, it's been pretty well documented that we've offered a 4-year deal to him, and there's a few other clubs that have offered 5-year deals with a lot more dollars attached to it. So, listen, I mean, obviously, my preference would be for him to stay, but if he leaves, I'm not going to begrudge the guy. He's given a lot, but I mean, we saw on Saturday how much it means to him to perform for the club and be captain. So yeah, I'm obviously my heart says, you know, I want him to stay, but I mean, I can imagine if someone offers him ridiculous money. I mean, you know, he's a professional footballer. You know, he's got to look at it. You know.
Do you think that him being made captain against Adelaide and they didn't go down the Nick Dacos path? Do you think that was maybe some sort of incentive of the club to say, like, we appreciate you or not?
No, I mean, if you look at Craig McRae, he's the type of guy with the integrity. It would have been basically like they've done like the last couple of years. If more hasn't been available, they put it to the leadership group and they've thrown the captaincy around to who they believe should be doing it that week. I mean, Nick's got his own dramas at the moment in terms of form and you know, carrying a few injuries. So it was the wise choice to let Maynard do it. You know, let Nick worry about his own game and dealing with the taggers.
Well, that was the next part I actually wrote down here as soon as you jumped on that I wanted to ask you about. Do you think that North will tag him this week? I mean, it's our first game at Melbourne. It's a different ground and stuff like that.
Yeah. There's no doubt they'll tag him, but the thing is, by them, whilst Nick is not playing, say, up to his levels of last year, it's letting other guys off the chain. You know, side bottom at times this year has been fantastic. Chris, the last few weeks, you know, whilst these opposition teams might focus in on one player, it allows other players to perform. So I'm not fussed.
Do you think it's having a massive impact on the way that Ned Long's playing and like that they're not sort of putting a main midfielder or anything man on man with him, and he's able now to play a bit more freer as opposed to when he was just coming into the side?
Yeah, for sure. Like, one team, they can't tag three or four guys in the middle. You've got to have some offensive weapons in the middle of the ground. So if they've got one player already focused in on Nick Dacos, and then sometimes you got Pendlebury in there, and they're obviously looking for the way the patterns that Pendlebury runs through the middle of the ground is, it obviously puts them to the disadvantage. You know, whilst we seem to be, like the last couple of weeks, we've lost in terms of numbers at the clearances, we've still been able to set up defensively well to mitigate the goals kicked against us.
Yeah, that's gonna be an interesting one. What are your thoughts about the actual game against North Melbourne? Like, do you reckon it's time to bring in Charlie West in this game, or just
I think I'd go, assuming Darcy Moore doesn't come up. You know, they'd probably err on caution and give him an extra week. I'd bring in West for Cox, and I'd bring in Parker for side bottom, who's going to get managed. Because I think Sherry rucks about almost 95% of the game. Darling does. Darling does the rest of it. Cameron can go with Sherry. We can get Ned Long to do a little bit of ruck work if we have to. I think Cox, it'd be better off him either playing in the VFL or having a week off and playing against Hawthorn, who have got, you know, possibly they might have two rucks that game when we play Hawthorn. We'll need a fresh Cox against them.
Yeah. Just quickly too, there's just a couple of comments that popped up. So Rick has said that side bottom is being managed this week, and then ESC's turned around and said, Rick, how do you know that? It was announced that side bottom is. Yep. I think was it Mitch
Cleary? I think it was, wasn't it?
Cleary, yeah. I think Mitch. Oh, there you go, Bozza. Mr. Champion Data himself has just popped up and said Mitch Cleary said on 7 News. So whenever anyone's in doubt and Bozza's in the chat, Bozza will just spit out all the facts to you straight away. He comments on the Collingwood posts on Facebook before Collingwood even posts them. So he knows exactly what's going on all the time. So that's that there. Anything else, Turtle, that you?
No, I'm really hoping Parker gets an opportunity this week. I think the temptation would be to maybe debut Harry Di Mattia as well, because he's played a couple of really good games in the VFL. But I'd like to see them just persist with him, give him maybe a month in the VFL dominating, get his confidence right up there, and then maybe debut Harry on the King's birthday.
That's a big game to debut, especially with Melbourne now slightly playing it back into a bit of form now as well, so which is going to be interesting. Just off the Collingwood topic for a second, Hatters, is there a team which, and I have wanted to ask you this for a while now, seeing as though we don't go live on Instagram too often these days, but is there a team at the moment in the competition that you are very worried about? Because I can give you probably two, but one in particular, which I think just man on man, pound for pound, they're probably up there as the best at the moment in the comp. Who do you think?
Flavour of the month, obviously, is the Bulldogs. Like their midfield, especially with Bontempelli coming back, and given that Darcy hasn't been playing the last couple of weeks. I know they trounced a pretty ordinary Essendon the other night, but I was just impressed how they kept the foot on the throat all night. But it's hard to tell, because like what happens in 3 months' time, whether it's form or injury. But yeah, the Bulldogs. I still think Hawthorn, when the whips will be cracking later on the year, will be dangerous, because remember this time last year, I think they'd only won like 3 games up till this point.
Pretty sure this time last year they beat Adelaide by like 90-something points at the MCG, and I know that because my son played Auskick that day on the G, and I remember I was there that game and I watched, and they manhandled Adelaide at the G, and I was like, geez, for a side that's like still lingering sort of towards the bottom half of the ladder, or the bottom half of the bottom half of the ladder, they're playing really, really well. I've got a couple, like, so obviously I'm all in on the Dogs this year. I think if the Dogs can get their players, the only difference between the Dogs and us that I think is the fact that, like, even though we haven't had too many injuries, we've managed players and we've had a few ins and outs or whatever it is, with the fixture that we've had, right? We've banked the wins nice and early. So we've got that sort of little bit of luxury coming into this side, this side of the season. But the Dogs didn't bank all of them early when they had their players out. So obviously when, before Sam Darcy hurt his knee and stuff like that, and they had Treloar, Bontempelli, Ugle-Hagan obviously was still considered in that list because we weren't sure when he was coming back at the time or whatever it was. And I think there was another one too they had out. There was that thing, that feeling that if the Dogs can bank a few wins nice and early and stay, anywhere around, like within the top 6 of the competition or whatever it is, come later in the season when they get everyone back, they're going to push. I don't feel like they got those wins where they probably needed to, but now they got their players back, and it's like they are still playing catch-up footy. Do you see that sort of side of it as well with them?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I mean, I haven't really studied their fixture. I know we don't play them again, do we? So no, we don't. They're going to avoid playing us. The game that was scheduled at Ballarat is the game that was scheduled at Ballarat is now at Marvel, which probably favours them even better being back at Marvel. I think they've got 8 games at Marvel for the rest of the year, which I think is good for them. I guess the only question on them is how they're going to adapt at the MCG, given that they're not, given that they don't play there so often.
Yeah. No, that's 100%. Peter Jesus said Sam Darcy is back in 2 weeks. I did hear today on SEN that he was getting back into some sort of light training and stuff like that. Post that. What was it? It wasn't an MCL or anything, but was it an MCL that he strained?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, it was a couple of those MCL and maybe a PCL. I think possibly.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other ones that I've got too is like obviously with Hawthorn, I do think Hawthorn obviously will make the finals. I think Hawthorn will probably finish in anywhere between 5th and 7th, probably around there. I don't think they'll make the top 4. I think with Hawks, they're probably still that 1 year away with their young list. Obviously, last year they performed really well. They'll still make finals this year. Obviously, like you said, when the whips are cracking towards the end of the season, I do think they'll win a final regardless. I'm not putting Gold Coast Suns in my watch list at the moment. I still want to see. I know they've had 2 really good wins in the last 2 games, but that was up in Darwin. I think if you played them in the Gold Coast or one of those games in Victoria, they'd probably drop at least one of them. Geelong, you just can't write them off regardless of where they are on the ladder or anything like that. I do think that come towards the end of the season, they're going to be pretty hard to stop. The other one too is, and just the way that they're playing the last couple of weeks, and they could come out next week or this week come in and get absolutely smashed. Who knows? But I've just got this sneaking suspicion that Melbourne might come back into the 8, and I've written them down as a little dark horse to get in there. And then as I wrote that down, Peter G's actually said the same thing. Melbourne is a dark horse for the 8. What are your thoughts on the D's after their win against Brisbane?
They might storm home, but I just think they've got too many losses up against them already. I mean, they're basically gonna they'd probably only be able to lose maybe 4 games from here for the rest of the year to make the 8. So I doubt that they're going to be able to hold that form.
Well, they've got
yeah.
Sydney, St Kilda, and then us. So
Yeah.
I mean, they'd want to win at least 2 of those 3, and then after that, they've got Port Adelaide away, which they do produce some good games there. So they've got a bit of a tough month of football coming up, and I like to look at with Collingwood, obviously the four game blocks and stuff as we go, and try as many games as we can. Which on that too. So the 4 game block that I spoke about last week was obviously the Adelaide game, the game now coming up against North Melbourne, then Hawthorn, and then obviously King's birthday. I think that with the position that we're in on the ladder, we can probably afford to drop 1, as long as we don't drop 1 too early. And that's why I was wrapped with the win against Adelaide. Because you'd expect us to get the job done against, with all due respect, you'd expect us to get the job done against North Melbourne. And that's why I think, and I said it earlier on, the game against Hawthorn then, with us locked in the ladder, and Hawthorn also still have to play Brisbane later in the season as well, which is going to be a very, very interesting game. I do think that we sort of have the luxury where we can drop a game soon, if we were, and it won't be as devastating as it would be if it was, if the top 4 was a lot more even. What are your thoughts? Do you think that we'll go in and not like take it easy, but do you think that we'll, go all out against the Hawks in a couple of weeks?
Oh, I mean, like they've been our nemesis, so I'm not going to predict anything against Hawthorn. I mean, even in our premiership years, we've seemed to have struggled against them. So I'm just hoping that Fly and the assistants who seem to work out a way to. I mean, Brisbane beat us 6 games in a row. I'm hoping the same, that they've been able to work out a method how to beat Hawthorn. Because we're not to say that we've got Brisbane's number now, but like we went from 6 losses in a row and we've beaten them 4 times in a row. So I'm hoping now that that this game coming up against Hawthorn, this will be like a really good test. I know it's a 6-day break, but like we've had a good break since obviously between the Fremantle game and the Adelaide game. And even like leading into this game, it's another 7-day break. So we're going to be pretty well rested into that Hawthorn game. So there's no excuses. It'll be a good test to see where we're at, like how much we've improved. Because Hawthorn have had our number for a long time. So if we can get over them, that'll put a bit of buffer between us and them. and give us the opportunity to even rest more guys. And as you alluded to earlier, Mitchell's sitting in the wings there, ready to come in and give a guys a bit of a rest that will need it later on in the year.
Well, that's what I was thinking, and that's why I said it earlier on, was that, you know, Fly's going to be massive over the next, I think, like this 4-game block. So obviously the game against, or even you can include Fremantle, resting those players that he did. Do you think that with resting the players, that allows Tom Mitchell then to come into the side? They move the magnets, but what happens in the situation then if Tom Mitchell's playing really well? Who do we take out in that sense then as well? Like, because you can't.
Yeah.
I know there's going to be injuries and stuff. There's probably going to be suspensions, and players are going to get sick, and players are going to get banged up, and whatnot.
It's a good problem to have, isn't it? That's the thing. I mean, if it means that, you know, three very good players are our emergencies, that's what's going to drive us to Premiership 17. I mean, we don't want to be in the position of where we were last year. We were looking in the VFL going, well, who's coming up? And we were going, really, you know, we were really clutching at straws at times last year.
I've said this a few times on my lives and on my videos. Last year we had so many players that we were depending on to play 2 different roles in the team. Like, we had to play Josh as an inside mid. We had to play Josh on the half-back line. We had to then play him on the wing at times. The same with Crisp. We had, you know, Howe pushing up forward for a lot of the games, obviously against Gold Coast, against North Melbourne. Kruger was doing the same thing too when he was playing. He was being a bit of a swingman to both ends. We haven't done that much this season. We've had Perryman play in the midfield. We've had Perryman play on the half-back line as well. Houston's pinched hit in the middle a little bit here and there, but we've pretty much kept the lines the same the whole season. I don't think there's been a player that's played 2 different roles, 2 different key roles throughout the season, as opposed to last year.
Yeah, and the bonus with having that sort of continuity of players, that we've been able to manage players, but then also conversely we've been able to get some games into Ed Allen as well. So you know, he's showing signs of being more comfortable at the level each week.
He just needs that consistency, though. He just needs that consistent block of games. That's it. Yeah,
but like he other than that silly 50-metre penalty that he gave away, which, you know, every player does it, even experienced players do it.
Yeah.
Like
he last week as well.
Like he's not panicking under pressure like that first game that he played against Fremantle last year. You can see he's a lot more composed. He understands the game structures. He kicks it to the right areas now. Even when you see the players, you know, when you're in the stands, when they've got their kickouts and everything, Ed's running to the right spots in the right widgets of the ground to set up. Lipinski was sub obviously this week, so Allen was one of those outriders for the kicks from the back line. So the players knew that Allen was going to be there in that similar role that Lipinski does.
Do you think it was fair to put Lipinski as the sub on the weekend? Do you think that is that a sign that he might be really challenging for his spot now? Because my personal opinion is I think Lipinski's had a great season. I think he's been very valuable to us. Sometimes his disposal can let him down, but I think his gut running and his meters when he's got the ball, the meters he's gaining, because he's very much of a run with the ball type player, and then he disposes it straight into the forward 50 from the wing, from that like wing to half forward flank section. He owns that so many of the moments throughout the game. I was surprised that he was the sub. I thought maybe a Will Hoskin-Elliott would have been the perfect sub for that game, but at the same time,
I reckon that there's only a limited type of player that can play that. It's either going to be, your older guys like Pendlebury or Sidebottom who can deal with it. Lipinski, who's, you know, in the middle of his career, again, he's not going to be too fussed, I don't think, if Fly says to him, oh, listen, you know, you played so many weeks in a row. We want you to fulfill this role and come on in the last quarter. He's not going to be phased by that because he's, you know, he's played 100 games, Lipinski, so it's not going to phase him. Rather than putting, you know, say Parker as a sub who, you know, who wants to get into the game and be involved, or Ed Allen, which I think has sort of been to the detriment, I think, of Ed's development. But I think playing guys that know their role in the team, and it gives them an opportunity to almost be like rested within a game. You know, like we did that with Pendlebury. We did that with Pendlebury against Port Adelaide in round 2, didn't we? Where he only, you know, he got a good rest within the game. So I think our player management this year.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because when Pendlebury, I remember I was sitting next to Dan that game, and I remember that when, you know, Pendles was on the bench as a sub, the feeling was, oh no, like it's the start of the end where we're managing him or whatever it is, and then you fast forward, you know, a month and a half, 2 months into the season, and it's like we're all like, rest him, like it's okay, like the perceptions change, and obviously that helps with the results and stuff like that. We've got the results to back it up, and obviously against Port Adelaide, you know, we smashed them. But it's just interesting how the mindset changes of the fans' point of view, where it's we're resting these players.
I think you get it because, I mean, you follow football in Europe, soccer, right? Yeah. And the clubs, I know they play a lot more games, but all the big clubs and all the best clubs, they manage their players like that. They don't flog them to death. They might play them 70% of a game, but they're always looking at the big play over the whole season to make sure that you got your best players at the best time of the year.
Yeah, 100%. I'd love to get your thoughts on Dan Houston. There's been a lot of reports and stuff and a lot of feedback from fans, and to an extent, I was one of them. On just one aspect of his game that I'm not the biggest fan of. But what are your thoughts on Houston? Do you think he's still? I personally think he's still settling into the structure of the side, and I still think he's settling into, you know, the difference between the Collingwood role and the Port Adelaide role. And I think, you know, obviously there was a massive hype, you know, with him coming in. I posted heaps of videos and stuff like that. Obviously with him coming into the side and picking up a superstar that he is. But I think the fans' point of view, we're expecting the All-Australian Port Adelaide Dan Houston straight away, where he's got a little bit of a different role and adjusting to a different game plan. Is that how you see it as well, or is it?
He attended a Club 42 function a few weeks ago, and he spoke about the differences between Port Adelaide and Collingwood, and I won't go in depth into what he specifically said because a lot of that stuff is in-house. But suffice to say that Collingwood and Port Adelaide play a very different brand of footy, right? Collingwood is a lot more structured in terms of what players have to do and when they have to do it. And I think he's been utilised in a different role at Collingwood as composed to what he did at Port Adelaide. And we probably utilise, say, Josh Dacos more in the sort of role that Dan was using or was being used at, say, Port Adelaide. And Dan's playing a little bit different role. And at times we're using Perryman and Houston in sort of multiple roles within the midfield and half back. And because they're obviously experienced guys, they know to sort of bounce off one another. So there was this, like you said, there was this expectation that he was going to come in and get 30 possessions and you know, absolutely dominate.
It probably didn't help that he was suspended for the first game, and then his first game was against Port Adelaide, and it's probably been his best game for us, that game in particular.
Yeah.
He was pretty good against I thought he was okay against Carlton when he got reported, that game that actually got suspended for that bump. I thought he was quite good against Carlton as well. I didn't think he was that bad against Adelaide. My only thing is with him, I've noticed that at times he's fumbling the ball on the first grab. So like the ball be hand passed to him, or it's coming like from the ground and he's not picking it up straight away, like as opposed to what Josh did on the weekend, where Josh just saw the ball, picked it up and bolted. And I think that's the expectation that you've got of Houston. But with that being said too, you take into consideration it's a wet game of footy. He's got a new role at a new club and he has to settle in. I was going to mention this, and Bozza sort of again stole my limelight, Mr. Champion Data, but he did make a very good point here. And I said this last week too. It's like Lockie Schultz last year. We have to be patient. Schultz had that. We had that expectation that he was going to be that absolute damaging forward, and he was going to do all these things. And obviously, he got injured. He got suspended. He had a couple of crappy games where his disposal wasn't that good. But then you look at the stats side of things, and stats never lie. He was our second most damaging forward for the whole year, right behind Bobby Hill. And I felt as if Schultz became really good towards the last couple of games of the season, like especially that game against Brisbane where he was starting, like he really started to find his feet, and he's carried that form into this season, even though unfortunately he's missed from an injury and now he's going to be out this week with concussion again. It has been confirmed, which I'm spewing that he's not playing this week because I thought the Marvel ground would really suit him. Being a little bit of a smaller ground in the forward line, he could really give heaps of pressure, but at the same time, if he's not 100%, it's probably an okay game for him to miss out to get him ready for the Hawthorn game next week.
I think also with Houston too, if you sort of have a look at the stats, Port Adelaide are more of a kicking sort of side, whereas we're more 50-50. Like we'll as much as we bring the ball out of defence by foot, we do like to run and handball. So it's a different type of game for him to adjust to. And I'm really confident, like come the end of the year, that he'll play some really good footy, and he could very well end up in our midfield rotations as well. Because as we saw with the first goal on Saturday, his ability to kick a goal from 55 and almost 60 metres is a weapon.
Yeah. It's funny because we've actually seen Braden Maynard do that more this season. And he's done that too. But there's still a lot of confidence though when he has got the ball, like Houston. Like when he's got the ball, you still sort of feel like you're like, it's like when Nick or Pendles has the ball. You sort of got that relaxed, like they'll know where to kick it. They'll find the spots before the spots even open up and that type of stuff. I just before we finish up, because I only got a couple of minutes left, just wanted to get your thoughts on Billy Frampton. Obviously coming into the side after Reef's obviously unfortunately done his knee, and it's just a shame that it took a player who we did put a lot of eggs into the Reef basket to do his knee, than to see a player like Billy Frampton come in and take his chance. My thoughts personally is that probably since, and I've said this heaps, since halftime of the game against Carlton. For the first half against Carlton, he turned it over a little bit, and it was his first game in. He was a bit shaky or whatever. But since halftime against Carlton that time, he hasn't put a foot wrong. Like it's not the same Frampton as we saw play last season or whatever. It's a completely different defender that we've got. There's a lot of sort of calmness and control about him this season. What are your thoughts on how he's gone?
I think for a lot of players, and it's that feeling that, like, he probably knows, unless he plays now shocking, that that's his position for the year with Reef being out, and he knows that he can go out there, just do his job. Whether Darcy's there or not, he's got Howie who's in great form. Maynard's always got his back. There's a group of defenders there that they're confident in each other, and you can see it even when he went for that extended run on Saturday, that he's got that belief, and I hope he does that a lot more, that he takes the game on. Like he does a lot of the basic things very well, and that's what you want from a defender when we've got so many attacking guys. But I'm wrapped for him. he did. We all know he did that legendary job on Harris Andrews, but he's a defender. I mean, he played up in forward line because he had to, because McStay was injured. But I mean, he could turn himself into a 2-time premiership player, but this time as a really dominant defender.
I think on that I'll just quickly, Chris has said here, Frampton on Larkey this week. If Darcy Moore doesn't play, do you reckon Frampton gets the job, or he gets the job on Larkey regardless?
Oh yeah, I think he gets the job, because I mean, Larkey's a tall bloke. Frampton has got reasonable pace. I mean, unless he gets unbelievable ball delivery and no pressure, no defender can stop that. But as long as we play, our midfield put a decent amount of pressure on, Frampton should be at least a break even. And if Larkey kicks 2 or 3, and the rest of their forwards don't really get off the chain, I mean, I'd be happy with that, because I mean, I think Larkey kicked 6 last year, didn't he? From memory,
5. I think it was 5.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, Hatters, I'm going to pretty much finish it up now, but thank you so much for jumping on. Just your final tips for the game on Saturday night. What do you reckon?
I reckon Pies by 29 points.
Pies by 29. I said 26, so we're around about the same.
Yeah. I think it'll be one of those games where North will be pretty feisty, but I agree with you that I can't see us taking them lightly. But yeah, I think North have found a little bit of form, and I expect them, to be hanging around there. I wouldn't expect a blowout at all.
Yeah. Well, I hope not anyway, because I don't think I've got it in me for a 54-point comeback again. I don't think we can do it. So, Hatters, thanks so much for tuning in, man.
No worries, mate. Go Pies.
Go Pies. That was pretty awesome. Thank you guys so much for jumping on tonight. We still have hoodies available. Special shout out to Melissa Cabata, who I chucked it on my Instagram story. So if you haven't already followed me on Instagram, make sure you follow me on Instagram. She was rocking the hoodie tonight, which was awesome. It's been a jam-packed show. We had Elie come on and talk about the Pies in North Melbourne. Hatters came on and we spoke about pretty much everything, giving us a bit of a sort of insight to, what he thinks, and, very similar to my thoughts as well. Make sure you guys, follow all the Collingwood content creators. We're at the point of the season now where it's going to start getting really interesting, especially leading up into the bye coming up. My personal opinion is with this 4-game block, we obviously got over the Crows. I think we'll get over North Melbourne. Hawthorn's the only one that I'm really worried about, and obviously the D's, even though they're playing good, I think we do have them covered on King's birthday. But we'll look ahead to this week first. North Melbourne on Saturday night, 7:35 at Marvel. One thing I didn't speak about too is it's actually got 2 games at Marvel on that day, which I think is just stupid. But I don't want to go into the umpiring. I don't want to go into any sort of officiating of the game at the moment, because I think we know that it's been up and down, or down mostly this season. So we'll talk about that another time. Make sure you guys drop a comment. Make sure you guys also just tell us what you think. Call it as you see it. And as always, go the Pies.